plus. Now, you might already have some training in some loops, but you might not. So we'll go ahead and let's take a loop at it. The first loop we're going to talk about is the while loop, because there is a while loop and a do-while loop in C++. The while loop tests the condition before the loop is entered, and the do-while loop tests the condition after the loop is run at least once. Let's take a look at the differences. Here we have a variable called count that's initialized to 0, and this loop right here is called the while loop, and it begins with a while. It puts the expression inside of the parentheses of the condition it must meet in order to run the while loop. Now, in our condition, in our case, is count less than 5? Yes, it is. It's 0. So therefore, this loop will continue to run, and this body of code will be executed until completion, until this condition of count is not less than 5. So, in our while loop, it'll print a statement printing out count each time, and then using the postfix operator and the increment operator of count plus plus, it'll increment count by 1 every time the loop is run at the end. So count will get 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and then it'll finally finish and give you the answer. So that's how the while loop is continuously run. Now the do while loop down here, we initialize count back to 0. It doesn't test this condition. It automatically goes ahead and prints count out, which would be 0, and then does the plus plus, and then it'll test the condition to see if count is less than 5. Alright, so when it gets down to this point, count is actually 1, and it already executed this line. So it's very, very important that you understand the difference between the two. As we can see here, count would be 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and then once it's 4, this loop would also be broken. But it's very important that you know that this execution of these lines of code would get done first before the condition's even actually checked. Okay, let's actually take a look at that. And this is from the while loop right there. It prints 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Okay, when this is done. Down here, it prints the 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And, and then 5. Actually. Down here, to see what, let's see, 1, 2, 4. Yep, it actually prints 5 down here as well, to give you a little bit difference of how these two loops work. Right here. Actually, let's go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and run this again and put a little bit better print statement here. Cout count while loop in quotes here. That'd be better. Oh, there we go. And right here, do while. Okay, that'll give you a better example. And down here, actually, I want to print I down here. I don't know why I didn't down here. Give you some better print statements. Okay, let's go ahead and run this again. Okay, better print statements. Okay, the while loop 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's the do while loop 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Okay, that makes it a little bit clearer because I was a little bit confused myself. Okay, so the do while loop goes ahead and prints this line no matter what. Okay, even if the condition is not met. So let's change the condition right here. Let's go ahead and say 0. Oh. Let's run this again. And you'll notice the while loop checks the condition and runs it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the do while loop, it doesn't check the condition. It actually just jumps in there, and my condition is actually if count is less than, count is not less than 0, but it executes these lines of code right here and prints out the 0, even though the condition's not met. Once it gets down to the condition, it breaks the loop because it now notices that it doesn't meet the criteria. But it did still execute that one line because, or both of these lines, because that it performs the action once. Now let's take a look at the for loop. The for loop, you declare a variable in the beginning, you put the condition in the middle, and then you put your increment at the end. So it's a little bit tighter than a while loop where you have to put everything kind of spread out. Here you just do it in one line. It's important to know that you don't have to declare a variable in the beginning. You could use a variable that's already declared, and you could just get, erase this and then use a variable that's outside, like, for instance, count. You could use count for your condition. Like that, and it'll be just fine. But if you want to, it's kind of good practice to declare a variable inside of the for loop. And notice the little semicolons in the middle of them. That's just to keep track of the different expressions inside of there, and it works pretty much the same. It'll declare a variable, run until this condition is false, and at the end of the loop, increase I right here. And all it'll do is just print out I for the for loop, and as you can see, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's what it does. Okay? Now if we move on, down here, let's talk about the break and continue statement in C++. Break is used to break out of the first loop it sees. So if you ever use a break, it'll find the first loop that it's in and break out of that. If you have several while loops inside of each other and then you use a break statement, it'll find the nearest while loop that's to the outer part of it to break, the first loop it sees. In our case, see this break statement right here? The first loop it sees would be the while, and then out of here it'll break this while statement here. Now to continue, disregards the remaining code and moves on to the next iteration. Okay, so keep in mind though that even though your book says something about next iteration, it will not increase count in this while loop in the next iteration. It'll just start the while loop all over again. You have to increase count if you're actually trying to continue on with the next value. If you don't want to use the next value and you actually just want to continue moving on to where it was, then you could do that. But in our case, I want to move on to the next value. It's pretty simple. I declare some variables up here. I ask the user to enter a number between 0 and 5, and I obtain that number. And I check to see if it's greater than 5. If it's greater than 5, I just want to break the loop and not continue on. If it equals 0, I just want to increase count and then continue the loop without doing the remaining code down here. And if it's basically 1 through 5, I want to get the total of the number you entered, and each time it loops, it adds it and increases the total to get the total number added together. So, and then at the end of the loop, of course, I increase count to continue on until I get the loop runs 5 times. Now this continue statement was put in here because if you entered a 0, and which is valid because I asked you to enter a number between 0 and 5, if you enter a 0, do you really need to add it to the total? You really don't. You can just continue on with the loop and then see what the next number is, because anything plus 0, like 6 plus 0, is still 6. So I still want to move on with my code, and that's the reason why I use continue right there, and it's a pretty good example of how to use continue. Now if I enter a number greater than 5, it's not valid. I just want to break it and then just show me how many numbers were added together and give me the total. So if you look at it, and I enter a number between 0 and 5, let's just use 1, and then 2, 3, 4. Let's test the continue statement by hitting 0. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, hit it 0, all the numbers added together were 10. Okay, so I hit 0, it continues on to the next iteration, which it still increased count, so therefore it broke the loop, and then gave you all the numbers added together. Now let's try to test a break statement. If it wants to cooperate, there we go. And let's hit 6, and then there we go, it broke the loop, and all numbers added together were 0. So you didn't have to keep on looping through the code and then trying to get rid of the 6 or something like that. So you see how these can be very useful inside of a while statement. You could use them inside of a for loop as well, or a do while loop, any loop in general. Just remember these basic rules that the break is used to break out the first loop it sees, and then continue disregards the remaining code and moves on to the next iteration. This was your tutorial on loops. I hope it was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.